Could you imagine finding an artifact that unequivocally proves the Bible? Maybe it would be a scroll that's inside of a golden box that has a bowl next to it with some white flaky stuff and a stick that has flowers budding out of it. And people would say, wow, that proves the Bible. Is that a reality? Could it actually happen? Archaeology gives us a lot of evidence about the Bible, but it doesn't necessarily prove anything. Take, for example, one of my favorite sites, el-hammam. It's a site just east of the Jordan River, just east of Israel, on this flat plain, surrounded by a bunch of other sites, and they all have some stuff in common. Now, when you look at it, you can find that not only do they have some in common with themselves, but they have a lot of facts in common with the biblical story about Sodom and Gomorrah. The first is their location. I mean, they're perfectly placed where Lot said he was going to be. It says that Abraham and Lot were having a conversation, and Lot looked around him and saw that the plain of the Jordan was well watered everywhere, like the garden of the Lord, like the land of Egypt in the direction of Zoar. That was east of where they were standing. They were probably standing in the mountains just to the west of Sodom and Gomorrah. That was before the Lord had destroyed Sodom and Gomorrah. According to this, the plain of the Jordan is a lush place, great for agriculture, great for sheep, and it was a place that Lot wanted to live. Another similarity is in the destruction of Sodom, and in the biblical story, and the destruction of these cities in this area. Some of these cities has a 3-foot thick layer of ash and debris that was like churned up into a soup because it got so hot. They even found pieces of pottery that the outside of the pottery is melted into glass, showing that it melted at temperatures exceeding 2,000 degrees Fahrenheit. That's one serious fire. You know, in Genesis chapter 19, it says that the Lord rained on Sodom and Gomorrah sulfur and fire from the Lord out of heaven. All the cities on this plain that have been excavated so far share in common this type of ash layer, the same type of pottery burned up, and all dating back to about the same time as Abraham. The last similarity between the biblical story and what's being found at Tal el-Hammam and the other sites around it is that these sites have that ash layer where they were destroyed, right? And then above that ash layer, there's proof that there was no habitation there. Nobody lived in that place for up to 700 years after it was destroyed. Now you tell me, why would a place be destroyed on a beautiful luscious plain and nobody lived there again for 700 years? I mean, this place was compared to the garden of the Lord, but now it's a place that's sat uninhabited or maybe uninhabitable for 700 years. What would cause a land to become so bad that it couldn't be inhabited for 700 years? Well, there's some evidence here for us. You see, when the Israelites came out of Egypt, they wandered through the desert, but then they eventually came up to the land, and there were some blessings and curses given to them in Deuteronomy. Let's take a look at one of those curses. It says in Deuteronomy chapter 29, verse 23, that if the Israelites did not stay faithful to God, their land would be burned out by sulfur and salt, nothing planted, nothing sprouting, unable to support any vegetation, and then it's compared to like the destruction of Sodom and Gomorrah, Admah and Zeboim, which the Lord destroyed in his fierce anger. Additionally, the verse that we looked at in Genesis 13:10 even tells us some more. It says that it was like the garden of the Lord, and then it gives a little side note saying, but now it's pretty much destroyed. This was before God destroyed it, but then it was like the garden of the Lord. So do these finds prove that the Bible is true? Does it prove the Bible? I mean, look, we have the right location, we have the right time frame, we have a city that was destroyed by tremendous heat, and then an area that lay desolate for 700 years. That fits the Bible story. But it's going to be up to you to decide whether or not it is.